Right, where are the combined arm slots? Down the bottom. Right.
Yeah, yeah, I'll be there in a sec. Zero, let me know when you if you see my stream.
And it's loading the video right now. Yeah, it's there.
All right, cool.
Don't mind that Twitch gives a little bit of delay, but
Yeah. All right, I'm in, Eddie.
Okay, copy that. Yeah, just starting to move the Reapers towards the target now. But obviously, the first thing to think of is that we know from the debrief thread that there is a lot of armor around Poti. Okay, so the first thing you could do is set up a simple air interdiction flight that is operating essentially on a kill box basis. So set up a target waypoint or a pair of target waypoints over an area. So say you could set up one target waypoint at the, if you look sort of south of Poti, there's that little river that runs east-west near Higmagala or whatever it is, and there's the bridges there. This is just me spitballing off just thinking what I could do in a given situation. Set up one target waypoint there. That's going to be the southernmost essentially area of hostile forces. Safe assumption there. And then I would set maybe another waypoint on the two road bridges and that rail bridge, where our secondary target was, quote unquote, Dojo. And then that gives you two reference points in the nav system for a target box, essentially, north and south. So between those two waypoints, you're going to look for stuff to kill.
I got you.
So
Now I know what you mean by target box.
Yeah, already we don't necessarily need to know if there's anything in that box or where it is. All we need to know is we are going there. If we find something, we're going to kill it. And how we kill it, we'll formulate that plan on the fly. That's why we've got things like the battle book for the profiles, etc., etc. So you make assumptions based on the type of targets you expect to encounter. So on the flop, it's going to be armor, let's face it. So weapon selections, well, Maverick, yeah, safe, easy. CBU 97s or Mark 82s, I would personally go with. Maybe given the armor concentration, 97s are a good bet. Probably only take two because I don't know what we're going to encounter. That's enough to start with the gun anyway. Then what we're going to do is fly there. I'm going to set an IP which is about 8 miles, between 5 and 8 miles away from that first target waypoint. So if we look at the bridge, basically the way I always set my IPs is I get the distance measuring tool out on the map. I look for a good direction that will give me visibility on the target. So I'm looking for mountains that would get in the way, major hills, terrain features, etc. And I'm actually thinking, in this case, well, all those little hills and stuff that are north of Coboletti, they give me great terrain masking if things go wrong. So I'm going to bring my IP to the south, about 8 miles. In fact, about 8 miles to the south, there is a rail bridge. You see, like there's that square-looking lake with that little sort of thin, long lake next to it. Just to the bottom, sort of southeastern corner of that, there's a rail bridge. There's my IP. The reason I picked...
I'm not with you.
Okay, right. So if you look at Coboletti.
Yep.
And come southwest of that, probably west-southwest. There's like a little square-shaped sort of lake with another little lake to the right-hand side of it.
Yep, got it.
Just to the south, there's like a railroad running north-south on the side of that, yeah, on the right-hand side of that lake.
Yep, visual.
And then south of that, south-hand corner of that lake, the railroad, there's a bridge over that little river.
Yeah, so you're talking just south of, I guess, Kavimo Natanibi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. And then that the northernmost lake, you're saying where that crosses there.
Yeah, so you've got that. Basically, there's that bridge where you've got a bridge with a railroad and a road bridge, and then south there's another little river, and there's just the road bridge on its own. Sorry, the rail bridge on its own.
Right, and so your point is, since the bottom of your target box is around, I guess, Hidmagala, that's giving you an IP about roughly 8 miles south of that.
Yeah, indeed. The reason I'm picking that, it's not so much the distance, but it is a geographic feature. So it's something where I can look outside the canopy look on the ground and go, that's my IP. I'm not reliant on the EGI and all this, that, and the other to tell me that with that box on the hood saying that's my IP. I've got a visual reference for the IP. It's something we can all see, we can all reference, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, good point. Because I was using Netic as my IP, which meant, thinking about it now, like once I lost those systems, again, it was a really good lesson. I didn't know how to get to my IP.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. This is the thing, you've got to remember, in the real world, A10s especially, and most aircrew, in fact, they still fly and plan their flights the same as they did in the 1960s before we had INS and GPS. They're still planning the flight so that it could be flown with a stopwatch, a map, and a compass. Especially in the low-level environment, especially. The A10 is still trained to fly at 300 knots up down to 100 feet using a map and a compass and a stopwatch. Now, obviously, none of us are going to get to that point for a very long time. But hey, we can come slightly close to it, and yeah, that's sort of the way I look at it. So that's why you've got that. 8 miles is a good IP distance because it means you can tip in from the IP, and you're then you're then immediately on an attack run with Mavericks. If you think about it, your IP wants to be is the start of your attack. It's not a place that you are going to fly back to after every attack. You don't have to do that. You can just sit there and fly from the IP to the target on the first attack run, and then you do what you need to do from that point on. If you don't need to go back to the IP because you say you've taken down the major threats at the target, and you can then set up a wheel on the target and just do like a few gun runs, do it. But that kind of thing, it's completely dynamic, and it's very much a judgment and experience call on what to do. But anyway, so digressing a bit. Right, so we've got the IP sorted, so that is obviously just going to be a grid ref IP. And yeah, same as always, 6-figure grid reference, even a 2-figure grid reference is good enough for the IP. Because all you need the nav system to do is get you in the ballpark. You know what you're looking for. And then as a little sort of cue, when you're naming your waypoint, give them a meaningful name. So in this case, what do you think we're going to call the waypoint?
For you're saying, sorry, for the IP of the kill?
For the IP.
I mean, I might call it something south of that city. I don't know if that's too complex.
Right. Well, do you know what I'm going to call it? Bridge.ip.
I see.
That's it. Bridge, because that's what it is. IP and .ip. Any IP you suffix with .ip. Any CP, as in contact point, you suffix with .cp. Any target you prefix with TGT.
Got it.
And that's just a simple naming convention. One I got from Noodle, actually. That's exactly what they're doing in reality. It's not something that's written in a book that says you have to do it, so don't take it like that. But it's a good technique to help clear up waypoints when you're flicking through them quickly.
Right, I'm with you.
And then obviously now we've got our IP, we need to choose a CP, so a contact point, which is before the IP. The contact point is going to be the point where you essentially come in contact with the enemy. You consider from that point you are within hostile fire range. You are absolutely being tactical, and you are essentially working for your attack. If it's a kind of mission where you do want to get the targeting pod onto the target before you do a run-in, which is nothing necessarily wrong with, that's perfectly fine to do, the CP is where you do it. So again, it wants to be not too far away, but far enough away that it's stepped back so that you can orbit at the CP, in a racetrack or whatever, at low level, and nothing is going to shoot at you from the ground. That's what you're looking for. So if you look on obviously, I don't know how well you've studied the map that comes with the OGS briefing pack. like the theatre map.
Yeah, I haven't studied it thoroughly.
Right. Well, on that map, you've got all these waypoints that are like Alpha 101, Alpha 202, 304, etc.
Yeah.
They are all intended to be CPs or IPs. So most of them are over some kind of geographical feature, and they're all sort of like the Alpha 10 waypoints are in like a certain kind of distance from target area. So they're like phase one. You know, the war has just started, and the plot is all as far to the far out as it's going to be. They're the CPs for that area. Then like the next row, the 200s, they are, you know, when we push them back a little bit. And then you've got the 300s as well. They're slightly further in again, and they're common reference points, so that you can have a CP of Alpha 201. We all know what that point is. We can all look at our map and go, "That's where he is."
I got it. I'm with you.
It's a common reference point. So that if like when we did now, where we did that little bit of the orbit trying to find the target, the CP is where you do that, not the IP.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I was not aware of that at all.
Yeah, the IP to target, that is literally the point where you are looking for the target outside the canopy. If you're doing a Maverick attack, you are slewing the Maverick onto the target and getting ready to press the pickle button. So how far the IP is from the target depends on what weapon you're using. But obviously for a Maverick, 8 miles. If it's a pop-up Mark 82 attack, your IP could be 4 miles away from the target. Likewise for a gun attack, it wants to be relatively close. It's that last reference essentially before you actually start killing stuff. Okay, and then obviously the rest of the flight plan, well, it doesn't really matter. You use whatever waypoints you want to use to get you to that CP. But that's how I plan a flight, essentially. It's almost backwards. Start with the target, then go to your IP, then to your CP, and then you work out the waypoints to get you to your CP, and then I work out the waypoints to get me from the target home again.
Okay, start from the target, plan backwards from there, from my IP to my CP, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Now, in this case, altitude-wise, personally, I'd be looking at CP probably about 6,000 to 8,000 feet down there. IP probably about 6,000 again, maybe a little bit lower, depending on play it by ear, see what it's like down there, because that is I know that's friendly ground because there's friendly ground forces over it, so I don't have to worry about how low I get there. But by being low, I can see the ground. I can look out of my window, use the zoom, to obviously increase your field of view because, it's nowhere near as detailed as it is in reality in the sim. So don't be afraid of using it to actually visually spot vehicles. If I can visually spot them, I can see them, without having to stare through the soda straw that is the targeting pod. I can see with my own eyes and pick out geographic references like, okay, they are what looks like to be, 2 football fields distance from that town. Okay, so now I can break off, set myself up for an attack and know that when I look at that town and then I look slightly up from the target when I'm rolling in, slightly up from that town, should I say, to the north, for example, that's where my target is and that's where I need to put my bombs. If you're staring through the TGP, yes, you might spot the targets from a distance, but you've then got to try and relate that to where they are in the world, so to speak.
Right, I understand. I'm with you.
Now, if you are, for example, at night, doing a, medium level JDAM and paveway attack or whatever, or especially WICMID, it's not unreasonable. There's nothing wrong with doing it at all. But in that case, you want to be, again, in a situation where ideally you know where your target is before you even take off, and you're almost pickling onto a waypoint, so to speak. You shouldn't be spending time, in the targeting pod searching for targets, because if you are, all you're doing is, if you think of it, now we've got the 65th and you guys know what's happening. You imagine it from my point of view in a MiG-21. It's difficult for me to find you. I don't necessarily know where you are, but if you're at high altitude, I've got an early warning radar that's going to give me vectors into your position. I can get vectors to your position. Bearing in mind it's dark, for example. I've got no NVGs. I get myself to within a couple of miles of you, pointing at you, flick my radar on. Oh, look, there's an 810 flying slow in an orbit with his wingman nowhere near him at 16,000 feet. Okay, let's just, creep up behind him and let's just gun him. Because he's not going to see me because he's busy looking through his targeting pod. You then flip that situation to an A10 that is operating as a two-ship in a line formation, at 2,000 feet, going east-west, just north of that Coboletti, just where the IP is we've just drawn out, doing like an east-west racetrack, 5-mile legs there, turning every sort of 30 seconds to a minute and doing a 180 turn. All of a sudden, my life is bloody difficult, because even if I can find them, I'll tell you now, having flown it and tried it with Stuka, I'm going to have a damn hard job shooting you, even if you don't see me.
Yeah, copy all.
Yeah, does that kind of make sense?
It does, it does. I need to internalize it, but everything you've said, I would ask if it didn't make sense.
Cool. And equally, the same thing goes for the air defences as well. If you are sat there in this orbit at low level, they can't shoot at you. Bearing in mind as well that in these missions that I have made and Stuka's made, the suppression script is running, so you can suppress a target. You can lob rockets at a group of armor, for example, or some AAA, and you will suppress that group. They will not shoot you for a given period of time, because they will be essentially the sim equivalent of, things are just exploding, what the hell's going on? That is running in the mission. So that's it's a bit of an advanced tactic, so maybe not something to actively think about too much yet, but consider it as an option. You may not necessarily kill the target outright, but you might be able to do something that, say for example, 1 could do something to suppress the target while 2 goes in and kills it with a line of CBUs. That's the kind of tactics that we're looking at. So you've got that option as well to open to you. And then if we look now, actually, you've just seen this armor come up to the south of Poti, yeah?
Yep, I see it.
Right, so tell you, right, that if we look at what we've just got, so we've got our IP and that south target waypoint there that we set up near Himmelgala, or wherever it is. Right, if we now look at a pre-planned flight, so we now know where the target is because we've got one. Do you know what, to be honest, I think I'd be happy with keeping that IP where it is. Have a target waypoint, I would literally set it. If you look and zoom in on that target group of armor, there's that little T-junction there with the road running north-south and then the road that curves around to the west and then up north again, the other side of it. I would set my target waypoint to be on that road. That little T-junction there. So it's not on top of the armor, but it's, within the group, size, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And then all I'm going to do is get to my IP. I'm going to, if I'm down at low level, I'm probably going to bump up to, 4,000 or 5,000 feet. Maverick profile set, set up as I'm running in from the CP to the IP. Once I get to the IP, bump up, China hat forward short with the HUD as SOI, bring up the Maverick as the centre of interest and selected weapon on the right MFD. Look at my HUD, get the wagon wheel, point it in that area. Okay, once I've got it in that area, look down at the MFD. All of us, okay, white dot, lock white dot, shoot white dot. I don't care what the white dot is, but all I know is that at that target there is a lot of armor that I'm there to kill. As long as I kill it, what order I kill it in doesn't matter.
Okay, copy that.
If you think about it, again, some of this stuff, it's like you think, well, it doesn't necessarily apply to DCS, and I agree, it doesn't. But, the AI isn't that clever yet. But, that's not necessarily what we're simulating. We're simulating, a bit of realism. So, ultimately, I don't need to wipe out that group. All I need to do is make it combat ineffective. I need to reduce it and reduce its strength and numbers and bring its combat effectiveness down to a point where if all that blue armor that's at Coboletti decides to roll forward on Poti, it just steamrolls everything because there's nothing there to fight them back. That's what we're doing in this mission.
Okay, I gotcha.
That's why I mean, last weekend with the all the combined arms stuff, the reason all that blue armor got wiped out, the reason all the armor that's currently at Poti and a bit more steamrolled south and captured Coboletti and Coboletti City, was because the A10s that were there were more concerned with plinking AAA and this, that, and the other, because they don't know any better. They haven't been taught any better yet. Perhaps that's a failing on my part and everyone else's, but they didn't do the job they're there to do. And I think there's an element that perhaps collectively we're not thinking with that mentality, and that's kind of more something I want to correct. And obviously, by passing on this knowledge to you guys now, hopefully that's a step in correcting that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the line of thought that you're espousing here is definitely not something I've heard previously. So, and it makes sense to me. So I definitely think that a re-education of sorts, right? And then again, I guess like with most of the things you say, right? It depends, but in this mission, in this scenario, that just makes sense.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
for
same for me.
example, for example, last night when we did our flight I did my flight with Gopher. What we did was at Zestafoni, so off to the sort of eastern edge of the AO, there was two groups of 4 BMPs, co-located with each other essentially, two platoons of the same company, and then there was an artillery group just offset by like half a mile off them. So this entire group, 3 groups, was in like a 1 mile square box. So essentially, it's one target, to us. What we did is we took off from, Vaziani, obviously, armed with 2 CBU-8 TB-97s, 2 Mavericks. I had a pod of Willie Pete rockets. Gopher had a pod of HE rockets, and we had the full load of combat mix. It took us, an hour and... Hang on, I've still got the tactic. Where are you? There we go. Now, admittedly, it's a shorter mission because obviously the distances are shorter, but it took us an hour and 40 minutes total from jumping in the sim to jumping out of the sim to kill all of those units. It was 2 passes with CBU-97s, one from each aircraft on each group of BMPs. That wiped out the BMPs in total. And it was then a Maverick run, double tap Mavericks on the artillery. Just, again, whatever the Maverick locked up. Not bothering to pick out whether it's an artillery vehicle or a truck or whatever. Gopher attacked the northern half of the group. I attacked the southern half of the group. 2 Mavericks each. Once the Mavericks had hit, we, obviously came off the target to the east from the Maverick run, circled back round. Obviously, by the time we're back round to the south of the target again, the Mavericks have hit, done their damage. We then run in, I think it was 4 gun runs each, target gone. Home for team medals.
Yeah, roger that.
So even if there was a fighter in the sky, it hasn't got the time, hopefully, to find us and kill us. Because by the time it notices that things are exploding, if you think about it from the going back to what I said before about what the MiG has available to it in terms of sensors and intel and stuff like that, basically nothing. The biggest cue I've got, or anyone else in the MiG has got, that something bad is happening and there's A10s in the area, is smoke plumes coming from friendly ground vehicles, or friendly ground vehicles to it, should I say. So it sees ground vehicles on its side exploding, it's going to go over there and try and do something about it. So from the first moment that first weapon of yours hits, you've lost the element of surprise. They know you're there. You need to do something about not being there as quickly as possible. So you need to balance that, killing the target and doing your job, with being there no longer than you have to be. So it's easier said than done, and it's one of those things where, to start with, you working as quick as you can work and at the limit of your knowledge and skill level, and it still might take you an hour to kill something that might, for example, for me and Stuka, might take 20 minutes. That's just the way it is. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just a matter of the fact that we've flown together so much, and obviously we've learnt together so much, that we don't need to talk about and discuss the things that, you guys might need to because you haven't flown with each other that much. That's just the nature of the beast. And as you fly together with everybody, within the group more, it's one of those things that will gradually go away and vanish to nothing.
Right. That makes sense. I think, yeah, just continually pushing it, and I think continually hearing this over and over, so I can just, it's, we say tactics, techniques, and procedures, right? But it's also just understanding the philosophy of what you're doing, and then just constantly reminding yourself of this is what the approach is in this scenario, and then all of those things just sort of extend out from that, right? It's all connected, because I think right now the entire philosophy of what I'm doing isn't really defined, and so it really just has a downhill effect on everything else you do and why everything goes to shit. So just starting to think about things correctly philosophically, at least what we're trying to do here, will aid all those other things. It's really, I don't think I really had an appreciation. I was worried too much about the trees as opposed to the forest. I actually think I need to understand what's happening in the forest, and then I could start to think about, how to handle individual trees, so to speak.
Yeah. If you want it, by the way, that tac view from last night is in the channel as well.
Yeah, I'll grab it.
But, don't get me wrong. That flight was far from perfect. There were quite a few mistakes that both me and Gopher made there. But from a top-down position,
File transfer
we got in, we killed our targets, and we both came home code 1.
Right. Yeah. Roger that.
And I think one of these sort of important things that I try and sort of get across to people is something that I think is missing in a lot of people. It's that aggression. Yes, we're playing a video game, but if you add a sort of try and approximate that kind of fighter pilot killer mentality, remember that you're flying a combat aircraft. Your job is to go in there and kill these things before they kill your guys. If you kind of think of it that way, apply that sort of mentality to it, you sort of start realizing why, being a bit quicker and pressing it, even, it might not be the perfect attack. You might ripple off 6 Mark 82s, and you might have been able to do it on paper with 2. Who cares? Ultimately, what you're after is effects on target. That effect being target gone away. And it's always better to drop all your ordnance when you didn't need to drop all your ordnance than it is to drop half your ordnance and then find out after that half of your ordnance is impacted that you need to go in and do a second attack. Because the second attack and the third attack and the fourth attack is when people get shot down.
Yeah.
I mean, again, the A10, it's one of those sort of... I think a lot of people, they get hung up on what they've read about the A10 recently in terms of Afghanistan and Iraq and things like that, and they sort of think that that's the norm, and it isn't. It's a counterinsurgency type operation. So it is. Everybody is sat there at 20,000 feet on altitude hold, looking through a targeting pod directed by a JTAC, pickling off JDAMs and paveways. However, if we ever did have another, Gulf 1991 Gulf War style conflict, if we ever did have a, fill the gap type scenario, with the Russian, fully mechanized armed forces versus fully, standing armed forces, with air forces and everything like that. Trust me, every pilot out there is fully aware of the fact that they would be flying like they did in the Cold War in the 60s and 70s at low level, or this, that, and the other, dodging around threat circles. The A10s are under no illusions that they will have to deal with fighters, because it doesn't matter if there are 200 friendly fighters in the sky, they can't be everywhere, and the enemy have got 200 of their fighters in the sky as well. Although the friendly fighters could shoot down 190 enemy fighters, that means there's still 10 going to get through.
Right.
So you still have to be in a position to deal with them. And what that means for the A10 is, option number 1, run away and hide. Option number 2, if you can't run away and hide, kill them before they kill you. The same is true of SAMs. Yes, there's seed out there that will wipe out most of the SAMs for you. However, what they will wipe out is the MIRAD and LORAD systems, so medium range, long range systems like SA10, SA11, SA6, SA3, so on and so forth. Things like SA15, SA19, Zeus, all that kind of stuff. You're going to have to deal with that because the sea can't take it out. Those systems are on a tactical level. There's going to be, I'll tell you now, the numbers of SAMs that I have in OGS is significantly lower than the actual Russian orders of battle say should be there. I think it's, what is it, each main battle tank company of like 12 vehicles overall has 4 SA-19s or SA-15s with it. You bear in mind a battalion has 3 to 4 companies of tanks, so you're now at like 16 to 20 SA-19s, SA-15s, etc. Plus, then you're talking SA-13, Gopher, dog-ear radars, Zeus's if that unit's still using them, because the SA-19 has actually replaced the Zeus. That's what it's designed to do, etc., etc. So all of a sudden you think, holy crap! If that ever did kick off, this is what the A-10s are going to be going up against. Even if C takes down half of those or 2/3 of those, you're still going to get shot at.
Right.
We have it easy. We're sat in front of a computer monitor. If it all goes wrong, we just press restart and start again.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, but that's the mentality I approach this with, because I just find that awesome.
Yeah, no, I want to be that capable.
That's what I get the kick from.
Yeah, it's exciting listening, thinking about it as you're talking about it. So I want to be that capable. I feel like I need to work my way up to it, but I kind of know the areas where I need to work on. So I just think there'll be a lot of trial and error. The more time I put into it, the more effective I'll get at it, and I'll internalize the concepts.
Yeah, indeed, you will. This thing, mate, make no mistake, 2 years ago, myself and Stuka weren't that far in advance of where you are now, if at all. We really weren't. Zero was in the 25th, before I was, I must say, but Zero, the skill level that those guys had then, obviously Stuka and Snoopy were part of that group. They had the same skill levels. I joined that group, and I had a bit more knowledge than them, but most of my sim knowledge was from the Falcon days, and it was all geared towards seed, strike missions and air-to-air. I haven't done much in the way of air interdiction and CAS work until DCS. So things like JTAC and FAC-A concepts and this kind of low-level, long endurance combat sort of work with the A-10 is new to me as well. We say it a lot, but if you go up there and learn one thing every time you fly, soon enough, you know everything. But you just have to make that conscious effort to, every time you fly, try something you haven't tried before. And I think the biggest sort of advice I would give to anybody, especially 76th guys, leave the PGMs at home. Even if on paper they seem like the sensible option, and they may well be, leave them at home. Take the dumb munitions. Obviously, Maverick, take those by all means, because that is an A-10 primary weapon, and leave the PGMs at home and learn to use the jet, down low in the weeds, yanking, banking, and fighting with that sense of aggression. It's a hell of a lot more enjoyable than sitting at 16,000 feet pickling off JDAMs.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Well, we got our work cut out for us, Zero.
Oh man. Yeah, but yeah, it does sound awesome the way you describe it, Eddie, and it's definitely a whole other way looking at combat than I guess me and Jojo did previously.
Yeah. The thing is, I think a lot of people, you look at it of, okay, it's a video game, I'm up there, I'm just going to press a button and watch something go boom, but that's a bit boring, isn't it?
Well, me.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Zero.
Yeah, me personally, I thought, if I were so low, I would get shut down by air defense or something like that. So I wanted to play it safe, but yeah, that's also something it's not necessarily fault of group, but I'm missing is that I miss the sort of guidance in the combat area. Now I know you guys do the flight night on Fridays, but I can never make it on Fridays, so that's a bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Don't bear in mind, mate. I mainly fly at the weekends. This is when I'm around because I tend to do everything that I do during the week for the most part. Work, go out, etc. Weekends, because I'm at that age now where everybody I know has kids and is married, etc. Apparently, they're not allowed to come out and play at the weekends, so I'm kind of left on my own to sit indoors and play on the computer. So I'm sat here most weekends, and I can certainly on the Saturdays, 9 times out of 10, I can fly. But what tends to happen is I won't put something in the ops board because if nobody else, or at least if I can't see anybody else is flying, I will tend to go and do the admin crap and or work on documents that we're writing and things like that, or work on the missions, etc., which is stuff that needs doing. So I don't necessarily put flights in the ops board all the time. But if you guys either put one in the ops board yourselves, or stick a post up on the forums asking to do work on something, then by all means, I know I will, I know Stuka will, will gladly come up and run you through things. Even if all you want to do is to talk over, some tactical concepts or whatever.
Okay, copy that.
I mean, flight nights as well. I know Stuka tends to fly on Tuesdays, Zero, and we just tend to put up a flight night on Tuesdays as well. So that one, yeah, get yourself in if you can. And things like when we do the wing group missions, etc. Definitely try and get yourself in on that because that is one of those things that it's the opportunity for us all to fly in a mission where there's 10, 12, 14, however many guys in the mission.